Last time we talked about Iliad, a very great poem, arguably the greatest poem and the greatest book in the Western canon, maybe the greatest book in any canon. But as I mentioned before, Homer wrote two poems, Iliad and Odyssey. And of course, some people even conjecture that there were two Homers, Homer 1 and Homer 2, Homer who wrote Iliad and Homer who wrote Odyssey. We cannot prove them wrong, but the likelihood that at the same, roughly the same period, Greece produced two poets who are greater than anybody ever is unlikely. This is not my argument, but I think it's a very valid argument. Indeed, they're so great, both of them are so overwhelmingly great, that this persona of Homer, somebody who starts our civilization, is quite compelling. There is one person there, I believe. Of course, they are very different. While Iliad deals with conflict, struggle, hubris, while Iliad has no good or bad guys, Odyssey is not like that. In some sense, it's simpler. There are good guys, or at least people for whom you root. And there are truly bad people. And in that regard, you could say it is not as great as Iliad, but in many respects, it is greater. For example, in terms of architecture, in terms of its structure, it's hard to go beyond Iliad, but it does. I will try to explain in this relatively short time why it is so great. But it's structurally amazing. And it addresses certain aspects of us, people, which Iliad misses or does not represent as much as Odyssey. So when people ask me, should they read Odyssey? Yes, of course. And by the way, people keep asking you, should I read this book or that book? My general answer is no. Basically, for a random book, don't read it. There are very few books which are worth reading. And one of the messages which I will try to sort of build during this course is that we have to read very few books and read them continuously, because we will never grasp them completely. So let us look at the Odyssey. Odyssey, in some sense, is a continuation of Iliad. It's a continuation probably written after a fairly long period of time, because one thing which is self-evident to me and was self-evident for most Greek critics is that Odyssey is a poem written by an old man. There are certain things there which young people just don't grasp, cannot grasp. It is also because it is so perfect, it's less energetic. The energy in the poem is by far not the same as in Iliad. So probably Homer writes Iliad, performs it all around Greece. Then when he is old, like my age, he writes Odyssey. Of course, I have no proof, but that's how it feels. So it is a continuation. It talks about return of Odysseus, the hero of Odyssey, home. as we shall see, one of the main themes of the poem is returns. There are multiple returns there. Odyssey is a major hero in the Iliad. He constantly advises Agamemnon, Achilles. He organizes special night attacks. He is probably the first person who decides to break the nightly code. And I don't mean code which you obey during night, but sort of a knight meaning a person with a certain military code, and do some outlandish things. After all, after the conclusion of Iliad, he is the person who comes with a devious plan to construct the horse. Right? And he leads the expedition in the horse. He is, of course, very brave, but a devious man of many wiles. And the book deals with return of Odysseus home. Let me start, before we talk about return, with a sort of where he is. Again, the book, as Iliad, covers a very short period of time. From the beginning of the book till the end of the book, there's something like 2 months. In Iliad, it's 51 days. Maybe in Odyssey, it's 51 days as well. It's a short period of time. He counts days. Of course, at some point, some much broader period of time is covered, but as a narration, as a speech, not directly. So in the beginning of the book, Odysseus is on an island called Ogygia. And in many respects, we could say that he accomplished everything a man could want. He lives on this beautiful island, maybe the perfect island, with a goddess, a beautiful goddess, immortal. And she loves him, and she makes him, as long as he stays with her, both immortal and eternally young. Think about it. This is the dream of our heroes. But of our heroes, what do they want? I mean, they want singularity. They want to transcend themselves, move into this eternal, except they're going to deal with the computer, not beautiful island. And right now, they could get young women from marketing. It would be harder when they move to this cloud location. But at least that's what they want, immortality. And he had it all. Immortality, beautiful goddess, eternal youth. And what does he do? Of course, at nights, we could figure out what he does. He has no choice. And indeed, she's a goddess, therefore, their love never disappears, at least during nights. But during the days, he goes to the seashore and cries and prays for death. This is this amazing thing. The person who got everything, immortality, eternal youth, the goddess, prays for death. And gods actually hear him. Why does he pray for death? Because he wants to go home. This is this amazing thing. He doesn't want to be on the most beautiful island with the most beautiful goddess. And she's a strange goddess. She just lives on this island by herself. She's not at all interested in whatever people or gods are doing. You know, she just self-centered. And having self-centered goddess centering on him, one would think give him perfect bliss. But no, he wants to go home to a craggy, rocky island of Ithaca. not the beautiful island with the goddess. He doesn't want to stay with the goddess. He wants to become mortal, and he is prepared to risk his life to travel to see his now middle-aged wife. He has been away for 20 years, 10 years of the war, and then 10 years of trying to get back home. By the way, 7 years he lives with Calypso, and he is truly desperate now. It looks 7 years is a very long time. He wants to go home. I repeat that. There is this thing which he wants more than anything else, and gods hear him. Of course, even for gods there is a problem. Because you see, one of the very major gods, Poseidon, the god of the sea, doesn't want him to go home. He wants to drown him. And since he's on an island, he cannot possibly get home without being in Poseidon's power. Oh, but now Poseidon is visiting someplace in Africa. There are beautiful sacrifices. So he has to go to these Ethiopians to get some food. Well, there is food in Olympus, but, or even in the sea for him. It's not that he's hungry, but he likes being venerated by Ethiopians, apparently, and that's he's there. And therefore, gods decide that somehow they have to arrange for his release. They send Hermes. Hermes is this messenger of the gods. He's a god who they always send someplace to let their will be known. So they sent Hermes to Calypso to let her know, let the man go. He needs to go home. She's, of course, terribly upset. She says, every time a goddess is in love with a mortal, you start causing trouble. And she goes through the list. And they're not sensitive guys, these gods, Olympic gods. But she sees it. And after all, she loves Odysseus. So she wants, if you love someone, you want him to be happy. And he is very unhappy. So here starts his return home, his final return. He has been returning for 10 years already. So before I tell you about this return, I have to mention that it is not the only return Homer mentions. Even before Odysseus' return is discussed, Zeus mentions, in the very, very beginning of the book, Zeus mentions the return of Agamemnon. Do you remember Agamemnon, the leader of the expedition? He also wants to go home. He also wants to see his wife, Clytemnestra. He also wants to see his children. And he does go home. The problem is that coming home is not always what we think it is. He does get home, but his wife's lover, Aegisthus, murders him. In the next lecture, we shall see some other interpretation of who really murders him. But at least Zeus puts it as he is murdered by Clytemnestra's lover, Aegisthus, and then Aegisthus is killed by his son Orestes. There is a brief sort of introduction to something which will develop in a rather marvelous trilogy by Aeschylus. We will talk about it in the next lecture. So return could be tricky. You do not know what you will find. You say, well, but, it seldom happens. Then, in the very beginning of Iliad, in book 4, remember this, Odyssey, in the very beginning of Odyssey, in the book 4, sort of. First 4 books, by the way, is sort of a separate part. It's beautifully structured, which deals with Telemachus, Odysseus' son. So, and in sort of, he's in Ithaca, he's desperate because all kind of unpleasant people want to marry his mother, suitors. And he wants to find out what happened to his father, so he goes to meet with his father's friends. And eventually he meets Menelaus. Remember Menelaus? He is Helen's husband. And while his return was not simple, while he had to struggle, it took him 8 years, not 10 like Odysseus, but 8 years, because he got stuck in Egypt. There were difficulties, which he tells, to get home, and he desperately wanted to get home. He gets home, and he brings uncountable treasure. He's right now probably the richest king in Greece, maybe the richest king in the world. His palace is absolutely fantastic. He has everything, plus Helen is with him, and she's still the most beautiful woman on earth. Not a goddess, but close. And what does he do? Apparently, almost every day he cries, because he wanted to go back. But he wanted to go back to his friends, to the people with whom he was there before he left. But they're all dead. They died fighting for his cause. And he cries. Sometimes he stops crying because he runs out of tears. And in some sense, it's even worse when you cannot cry. By the way, these heroic men do cry. Right now we're trained that men do not cry, real men. They have real men, and they do cry. I mean, they're real men. I mean, they do fight, they do kill, but they cry too. So Menelaus cries. So return is not always simple. But let us look at the story a little bit of Odysseus' return. Again, you have to read it. It's a very beautiful book. In some respect, it's a more beautiful book than Iliad. So remember, we left Odysseus with Calypso at this Ogygia island. So she gives him time, 5 days. And in 5 days, he constructs a beautiful raft, very, very good raft, with a sail, so sort of he could control it. It's not a really major ship, but one person cannot deal with a major ship. And he starts on his path to Ithaca. Ithaca, by the way, is someplace, it's not clear in Odyssey, but traditionally it's an island the west of Greece. Yes? And Ogygia, we don't know where, but there is an ancient theory. Plutarch, a wonderful historian, tells us about it. That's an island west of Britain. Do you know what it's called? Island west of Britain? Ireland, yes. And many Irish actually believed that Ogygia was indeed Ireland. That's where beautiful Calypso was living. Are we certain? No. That's a nice story. So he starts from wherever he is, and it's far, because it takes him 18 days to sail with a good wind. Calypso gives him a good wind. But eventually Poseidon realizes what's going on. It's not good, because Poseidon could do anything on the waters. And he does. The raft is destroyed. Odysseus is almost at the point of drowning. He tries to swim. He sees the land in front of him. He swims the terrible rocks. He knows he will drown. He has to swim back and along trying to find some way to get to land. And finally, he sees that there is a river, and he could get there. No rocks, he could get there. And literally, with his last breath, he stumbles upon the shore. Touch and go, but he wants to get home. He doesn't know where he is. And in his travels, he's been around. He knows that not every territory is a friendly territory. You know, there might be cyclops living there who eat you for breakfast and for dinner. So he already traveled. He knows. He's seen lots of things. He even been down to hell. We will see. So he goes and sleeps in the bushes because it's scary, but you know, he hides, he covers himself with leaves. He is on this island, highly civilized island, with Phaeacians. We do not know exactly where it is. And some people say it might be Corfu, Kirkira, for ancient Greeks. So whether it's Corfu or not, I don't know. Some people say it's Atlantis. We will encounter Atlantis when we talk about Plato. You heard of Atlantis, yeah? So maybe it was Atlantis. We do not know. But it's a highly developed island with wonderful, almost miraculous ships, which they navigate all over the Mediterranean and beyond. And they have a king and the queen, and they have a beautiful daughter, a princess, who goes with her maids to wash her dishes. It's a marvelous thing. I mean, Odyssey is full of these little details of how households run. And princess at that point was still washing their own, not dishes, did I say dishes? No, clothing. She needs to go wash her clothing and her brother's clothing because he goes in this shirt, which is not really clean. So she gets this lots of clothes, and also she wants to wash her wedding dress so that it will be beautiful. She doesn't have anyone to marry yet. Her name is Nausicaa. So she's very beautiful and highly intelligent. So they go and they play ball on the beach. Greeks believed that she invented athletic balls because that's the first time balls appear, you know, football, basketball. So it all goes back to that ball. So they play with the ball and they wash the clothes. They sort of almost ready to go. And here comes this terrible, extremely dirty, unshaven guy, and naked, Odysseus. And he hesitates. He doesn't know what to do, whether to touch her knees as you do when you want to ask somebody for a favor. You kneel and touch their knees. But he says, well, I'm naked and dirty. I mean, it wouldn't be nice. Or do I talk from afar? And that's his choice. He says, oh, please help me. I'm desperate. And she comes with a plan of how to get him to the city. They give him, they wash him. They give him some oil, and a well-groomed Greek would be covered with oil and would have sleek hair, not like mine. And that's how they did it, with olive oil. So they give him some perfumed oil, he perfumes himself, and they go back to the city. And in the city, eventually, they treat him, he meets the king, the queen, they treat him beautifully, and they say, yes, we will give you the very special ship which will get you home to Ithaca. And we will give you a feast in your honor. And at the feast, first they invite Demodocus. I told you about Demodocus in the second lecture. He is a great poet who's blind, who sings the songs about Troy and about gods and many other things. And when he sings about Troy, the king sees that Odysseus cries. And so he asks him, why do you cry, and what's going on? And eventually Odysseus tells them who he is, and he tells them his story. We have 4 books right in the center of Iliad, from book 9 till book 12, which is the story Odysseus tells during this feast about his travels. That's the only part you might have heard, Cyclops and everything. So it's a beautiful yarn, and there are all kind of evil. I mean, of course, Cyclops is the most evil person. It's Polyphemus with one eye who eats people. I mean, he eats sheep when he cannot get people. But he strongly prefers to eat people and eats part of Odysseus' crew, and then Odysseus blinds him. And in a tricky way, he, with his companions, escape. Sadly enough, Odysseus, who at first tricks Polyphemus by telling him that his name is No Man. No man. So when other Cyclops ask Polyphemus, who is hurting you? He says, no man is hurting me. And they say, oh, then it's fine. And but Odysseus could not resist. And after they sail away, he shouts, I, great Odysseus, blinded you. That's what comes from boasting. What he does not realize, that Polyphemus has a father. Most people do. His father happens to be Poseidon, a major god. And if you plan to travel by sea, it's not a good idea to blind Poseidon's children. So there are many other, I cannot tell you everything which is going on, because we have to get to the final thing. So they listen, and of course you have to read it. It's a beautiful yarn of all his places he goes, Scylla and Charybdis, whatever. Beautiful. But his speech is over. Phaeacians give him marvelous presents, gold dresses, all kind of stuff, and send him on this special boat, special ship, very fast, back to Ithaca. And they make a comfortable bed. He goes to sleep, and while he's asleep, the ship arrives to Ithaca. So here comes the central part of the book of actual return. He's at Ithaca. And at first, he wakes up, he looks around, and he doesn't recognize it. And he's heartbroken. He was promised to get home. Again, he wants to get to his home. He doesn't want treasure. He doesn't want goddesses. He doesn't want immortality. He wants to get home. So he is devastated. But then Athene, the great goddess, and she's his great friend. He wouldn't be where he is without her help. So she comes to him, explains the situation, says, yes, this is Ithaca, don't worry. You see this and this and that. He nods, yes, this is Ithaca. He's very happy. But the problem remains. There are these 100 suitors, sleek, rich, powerful, young, who are at his house trying to marry his wife, one of them, of course. Because, marrying a wife of the king, declaring him dead is good for you. Some of them don't care about Penelope. She's a beautiful woman, but, middle-aged now. And she has a grown-up son who is 20, so it's not just sex, it's power, as we talked about it. So this 100 suitors. And to get there, he needs some ploy. Because Odysseus and ploys go together. He's the man with ploys. Remember the horse, but not just the horse. Man of many wiles indeed. But here Athena helps. She transforms him into an old, homeless man. Sort of, he looks really disgusting, and she gives him appropriate clothing. So he could sneak home without being recognized. And here comes another theme which is very important for the book. The notion of recognition. It's not just a return, but recognition. And he returns home, he needs to go home, and again, for many of us, sort of the idea, yes, we never had to compete with suitors, with these sleek and strong men who want our wife. But metaphorically, there often, when we try to go home, whatever home is, we find this strong and sleek man who took everything there, who worry only about getting good dishes. They want actually to get free food, not just for, filet mignon every day. So Odysseus will be broke if they continue doing it. Well, or at least his family. They think he's dead. They eat and drink and carouse and corrupt maidservants. No. They are sleek and strong. So they are not likable. And he wants them dead. And so do I in the book and in real life. These people are not attractive. Unfortunately, unlike in Odyssey, we seldom have a chance to slaughter the suitors, the people who do things like that. So he goes back, and his going back is one of the most beautiful things in the literature, maybe unsurpassed. It starts with something which my heart stops every time I read about it. When he left home 20 years ago to go fight at Troy, he left a young pup, a dog. His name is Argus. And he survived. For 20 years, he's been waiting for his master. And Odysseus, in disguise, comes, and a large pile of manure, because nobody takes care of this pup. Nobody likes him. There was this dog, and the dog sees Odysseus, and they both recognize each other. And dog does this with his ears. He folds back his ears, and he wags his tail, and he tries to crawl. He's an old dog. He cannot get to Odysseus. Odysseus starts crying. Again, tears start falling down, and the dog dies. And what could I tell you? That's where you see that this is great literature, with the dog. And then there is this amazing story of Odysseus pretending to be a homeless beggar in his own house. And if there is a book ever written about how you should deal with homeless beggars, that is it. Because what you hear these people say is what you hear sleek and strong people say now. Because he's just a bum. He doesn't want to work. I would have given him a job, but he would. Haven't you heard? I'm sure you have. And of course, they don't want to give him money. They don't want to even to give him food. The sleekest and the strongest want to throw furniture at him and do. Well, to make long story short, you have to read it. It is indeed an amazing story. He arranges for a competition. It's actually Penelope's idea. She says, okay, if any of you could shoot an arrow, in a special, I'm not going to go into details, shoot an arrow from Odysseus' bow. I'll marry the guy. Well, he's a hero. His bow, not everyone could shoot. None of them can. And then this beggar, this homeless guy, says, let me try. Of course, they are very mad. They know for sure that he cannot possibly shoot such a thing. They say, no, just go away. Tomorrow we will oil it specially. We will pray to right gods and we will do it. Go away. But somehow, with the help of Telemachus, his son, who at that point already knows that Odysseus is his father, he gets a chance, he shoots. And of course, he can shoot. And how? Well, and then he starts shooting not at targets, but at suitors. And he is a good shot. He is a hero. And they die, many. But then he runs out of arrows. And he and Telemachus and a couple of servants who are faithful servants, not everyone is. Swineherd is the best guy in the book. It says that's the most positive. So don't look down upon swineherds. They defeat the rest and kill them. Of course, the thing which I missed on purpose is another recognition scene. The recognition scene is that when this beggar comes, Penelope meets him, but she doesn't recognize him. And she asks the old nurse, Euryclea, the old nurse of Odysseus, to wash his feet. That's what you should do when a homeless beggar comes to your house. Wash his feet. So the nurse comes to wash, and she doesn't recognize him. But then she starts washing, and she finds a scar which Odysseus got as a young man, and she knows. He, of course, stops her from saying anything. But this is the second. Again, this idea of recognition comes and comes again. So now Euryclea knows. And then finally, the great recognition scene between Odysseus and Penelope. What happens is that while he's killing all the suitors and cleaning the house, he actually does clean the house. Physically, they rub the things. And if you kill about 100 people, lots of blood. So they clean it up, and Euryclea, remember the nurse, goes up to wake Penelope. And she says, Odysseus is home. And Penelope says, you're mad. You're mad. I mean, he cannot be home. He's been waiting 20 years after all. And says, no, he's here, he's the beggar. And he killed all the suitors. Penelope goes down. But she doesn't kiss him. She's not sure, 20 years. And he doesn't look himself. Not yet. He will soon. But even when he does look, when Athene restores his gorgeous looks, she's not sure. 20 years, he changed. Maybe it is an imposter. And finally comes this beautiful recognition scene, because she wants somehow to test his knowledge. And I'm going to slightly modify how it actually happened. You will read it. She suggests that he moves his bed out of their bedroom and sleeps some other place just to relax. She doesn't want to sleep with a person she's not sure who he is. And he says, in total amazement, how could I move the bed? The bed I built myself. It is built in the house, into the house. It is based on this tree, huge olive tree, around which the house is built. You cannot move it. And she knows. And she runs to him, she hugs him, she kisses him, and they go and they see this bed and they're happy. That's many people from ancient times believed that's where the poem stopped originally. It doesn't. It goes for a little while longer, and there is more fighting, a little bit more, just one more person dies. And deservedly, but not by Odysseus' hands, by the hand of Laertes, his father, because there is another great recognition scene when Odysseus goes to see his old father, who is desperate. He lost his son. His wife died from broken heart, Odysseus' mother, and he is there living as a slave, not because he has to, but because nothing is, I mean, he just works with his trees. He loves trees. He's an agricultural type, in spite of being the retired king. So, and there is a great recognition scene there too. I cannot tell you all of them. But again, read it. So now to wrap it up, I skipped one scene because I was not sure if I would have enough time, but I have about 3 minutes, so I have time to tell you. During his narration, when he tells about his travels, he also tells about going down to hell, because he needs to find Tiresias, the prophet, who would tell him how to get back to Ithaca. Not that it doesn't work that time, but he goes, and there is the first ever, everything, of course, in Homer is the first ever, scene of descending to hell. We will see it time and time again in Virgil, in Dante, and I cannot tell you it's a large section, but one thing I have to tell you. Remember Achilles, the great hero, who would prefer death to inglorious life. So he meets him. And Achilles tells him, "Speak to me not about death so soothingly, brilliant Odysseus. I would prefer to be working the earth, hired out to another, even a landless man whose living is far from abundant, than to be lord over all of the phantoms of those who have perished." There's a very sad thing. Of the great hero Achilles, who in the previous book was willing to die, says that I would rather be a slave, but a slave among the living, than being the king of the dead. It is a very important thing in terms of Odysseus. And after that, Odysseus gets an offer of immortality. And what does he do? He goes back home. He is prepared to die. So, at that point, I am going to finish the lecture.